All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get her going here. Start me off. Where to bid to go? Have it like $1,000. Open it up.
Deed in lieu of foreclosure. This is part 2. Welcome back. Yesterday I posted video titled Deed in lieu of foreclosure. That was number 1. And I started out with a handful of factual statements. We're going to do the same thing today. But this is going to be part 2 of that video, Deed in lieu of foreclosure. So let me quickly review those facts so that we start out the episode and you have some basic understanding in case you missed lesson 1. So in order to understand what a deed in lieu of foreclosure really is, I'll try to go through some factual points. This is kind of a complicated process for a lot of people. So number 1, a deed in lieu of foreclosure means the borrower and the lender have reached a mutual agreement, an understanding that the borrower is no longer going to make the payments on the property loan, okay? So what does that mean? That means the installment contract, which is more than likely a mortgage or a deed of trust, or maybe even a contract of sale, the borrower is no longer going to make those payments. That's number 1. This is not going to be a Christmas holiday for the lender or the borrower. So first of all, the borrower is going to go through a foreclosure here, and that's going to be on the credit report, could last for 3, 5, or even 7 years before they can buy another property. So this is extremely difficult on that particular borrower because they're going to have other problems when this is finished. It's not easy for the lender either. Why? Because now the lender is going to take back the property and it might not be in good condition. It might be in disrepair. So they're straddled with that property and they're going to have to resell the property to get the money to pay their loan. So both parties here are somewhat adversarial, but a deed in lieu of foreclosure can help both parties. There's no doubt about that. All right, now if there's other obligations on that property, well, this is going to complicate it. By that I mean, what would the other obligations be? How about judgment liens? How about tax liens? All right, that's going to make it complicated because what this lender is doing is they're willing to work on their loan, a loan they have funded, they're willing to work on. But if there's other liens on the property, other obligations, tax obligations, or judgments on the property, they're not going to work on that. So this whole thing could fall apart very easily. The point is, this is not a panacea, and everything is going to be easy. You want to understand this is going to be contested between the parties. All right. Now, lastly, I want to mention there's an 800-pound gorilla sitting in the room while all this is going on. Now, what is lurking in the room with this 800-pound gorilla? Well, it's called the Internal Revenue Service. And what on earth do they have to do with all this? Well, if a lender forecloses or they go through a deed in lieu of foreclosure, what they're doing is they're forgiving a debt. And when their lender forgives the debt, in the eyes of the IRS, not my eyes, not your eyes, but in the eyes of the IRS, they have created income for that particular borrower. All right, so when you forgive debt, that's fine. A bank is allowed to do that. However, if you have debt forgiven, it's now considered income. Now, I'm not a tax attorney. I'm not an attorney, period. I'm not a financial planner. I'm not a CPA. I'm just an author and a publisher trying to give you some insight into what's going on in deed and foreclosure. Yes, you need expert people to help you out like an attorney. So I'm Ted Thomas. I've been involved in tax defaulted property and distressed property for over 30 years. In the last episode, I talked about some of the challenges surrounding deed in lieu of foreclosure. I'm going to try to give you some solutions now. The cavalry is kind of coming, and we can call the cavalry the deed in lieu of foreclosure, but this is not going to be a piece of cake. Okay, the borrower who is in trouble is still going to be in trouble. You might be able to get that bank loan off your shoulders, which would be a nice thing, but you're going to give the property back to them, and you're still going to have the foreclosure on your record. All right, so the action to stop all this and make it happen is up to the bank. All right, so the bank basically is trying to recover their collateral for the loan. All right, How do they do that? What they have to do with the mortgage is they have to sue you. They have to hire an attorney. They have to go through a lawsuit process. In other words, they're going to become a plaintiff and you're going to become a defendant, and this is going to start costing a lot of money, and it's going to have to end up in front of a judge. So if you can do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, that's probably going to save everybody a lot of money. I said probably. I don't know, but I'm just trying to give you some insight into that. So many foreclosure properties are very difficult to sell. Why? Because people haven't taken care of them. And if they haven't taken care of them, why would the bank want the property? So that might hold the deal up too. The point is, the lender is going to make the decision, will this deed in lieu of foreclosure work for them? All right, so you want to think about that. If you're relieved of debt, the IRS is going to get involved. So I'm Ted Thomas, and as I say, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a real estate broker, and I'm not a CPA. All right, so what's going on here? Well, the bank basically wants their property. That's what they want. All right, so what did I do? A number of years ago, I thought this business out, and I said, why don't I get in a business that's going to be a lot simpler? A lot simpler business is tax defaulted property. Why did I want to do that? Because in tax defaulted property, what happens there, there's no bank involved. Okay, it's just the treasurer of the county. When the treasurer sells the property, they're selling it for back taxes. The mortgage and the deed of trust have been wiped out. So when a bank wants to collect money, they want to collect money on a loan. So let's say it was a $100,000 property and it had $80,000 loan on it. The bank is foreclosing at $80,000. So if you show up at the auction, the starting bid is $80,000. I don't know if you're going to want that property at $80,000. It's only worth $100,000. That doesn't leave you very much margin. All right. So what if the property's in disrepair? That's going to cause you even more scratching your head. You probably don't want that. So foreclosure properties are not easy. This is not a piece of cake. So 30 years ago, I discovered a lucrative business. There was plenty of it. It was called tax defaulted property. All right. Now, this is a solution for a lot of investors. Now, when these properties are sold, they're sold for the back taxes. For example, a $100,000 property at a tax defaulted auction, it might have a starting bid of $5,000. Now, a $100,000 property on a regular foreclosure auction, that might have an $80,000 loan. So that one's going to start bidding at $80,000. We're going to start in the tax defaulted business at $5,000. So I'm sure you can figure out that math. You want to be buying tax defaulted property, not bank foreclosures that are going to cost a lot of money, unless the bank is going to sell them for 5 or 10 cents on the dollar, which I doubt that's going to happen. All right, so bank foreclosures, that means the bank is trying to collect their loan. First, they want to get the property. Then they're going to put it out for auction. They're going to try to collect all their loan. You see those little white circles? That's how many auctions are taking place within that state in the next 90 days. This calendar updates every single day. I'm here today to show you how to make money. To do that, I'm going to show you briefly that there are thousands of tax defaulted real estate properties across the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. This is quite interesting. You're looking at the Ted Thomas Magic Interactive Map and Auction Calendar. It changes every day. Now, I created the calendar and the map so I would know how many auctions are taking place every day in the United States. Now I can show the little guy how to make money. Most importantly, I created this system so I could have an auction list for each auction 24/7. When the tax auction takes place, the county is auctioning a property 5, 10, 20 cents on the dollar. Why so low? Because the county only wants to collect their taxes on the property. And when they sell the property at a public auction, what they do is they wipe out the deed of trust loan or the mortgage. It's wiped off the property. So now the new owner buys the property free and clear of that mortgage or deed of trust loan. All right, they probably bought the property for 10, 20, or 30 cents on the dollar. They can sell it for whatever they want. So think about this. Ask yourself the question. If you could buy a property for 20 cents on the dollar, and then you could sell it for 60 cents on the dollar, is that enough margin for you? All right, well, that's what we do at tax defaulted auction. All right, so if that would work for you, I can tell you right now, that's going to work for the county, and it should work for you because you'll be able to pay your bills. So let me ask you a question. Are you willing to work? Most people I know are. All right. So if you want to generate a portfolio of these properties, I can show you how to do that. All right. Now, in this business, you don't need a fancy license. You don't need a license from the state governor. You can just get started whenever you know how to do it. So throughout these videos, I'm going to show you some interesting examples of previous deals that my experienced students have done. You'll really like this. So conventional thinking always tells you, well, if you want to make big money, you got to have big money. Well, I'm about to show you something that's different than that, where you could do it with a small amount of money, but you could make big money. So in this example, I'm going to prove that you don't need a huge bundle of money. So one of my clients started out in a local county just north of Tampa, Florida. Now, it was a small population county just north of Tampa, and the investor started out and he bid on a property as part of the bidding process, a public auction. He bid $9,100. Well, the property was slightly used and abused. However, it was really under-maintained, that's for sure, completely overgrown with trees. It did not look pretty. It was not pretty. But the tax assessed value was $91,000. Now remember, he paid $9,100. It was $91,000. So using the techniques that we had taught him, prior to going to the auction, he checked out the neighborhood, checked out other properties, and found out values were all the way up to $150,000 in that neighborhood. So he went and made the purchase at $9,100. What did he do? Well, there was a tenant in the property that was a fixer-upper person and knew how to fix the property up. So he sold that property on a contract. I sold it on a contract with monthly payments, got $5,000 down, and sold it for $150,000. All right, now do that in your head real quick. He sold it for $5,000, and now he's going to collect the rest in monthly payments. Boy, that's going to be a profitable deal. You could be making the same kind of deal. Now, this is just a tiny, tiny glimpse of the kind of spectacular profits that are made in tax defaulted properties. People do this on a regular basis. All right, there's much more that I can show you, and I will in future videos. All right, so what did we have to do to make money out with that property? Don't ever underestimate marketing. That's important. This simple blunder of not knowing how to market is what costs most people their property. Why? Because they don't market it aggressively. So I'm going to tell you some ways that provide a solution, and you can do just as I say. So unfortunately, most sellers don't do this. If you'll do this, you'll be successful in the business. So spend your money and your time on marketing and media. What do I mean by media? Sell the property using eBay, using Craigslist, use the multiple listing system. Think about Facebook Marketplace. Think about doing it on Trulia and Zillow, any electronic site. You're going to sell the property a lot quicker if you're an aggressive marketer. Now, what about the newspapers? They still work. What about real estate clubs? You really want to think about real estate clubs because what? Who's in the real estate club? They're all bargain hunters. Good place to sell your property. So the selling process will allow you to succeed. People that buy these properties, they don't necessarily spend time hundreds of hours of fixing and cleaning and doing whatever. They basically clean them up and then resell them. Now, I'm going to run out of time on this video, so I want to mention to you that I answer questions for the YouTube clients. If you have a question, you can send your question in. Now, the question that comes in the most is a question about how do they find properties in their local counties or in their local state. So what I did is I've created an auction calendar, okay? It's an interactive map and auction calendar. And all you have to do is just watch what's happening now. As you can see, the mouse is right over the state, and electronically, the auction list will pop up. It'll tell you how many lists and how many auctions are going to be in that state immediately. As soon as you put the cursor over that state, it'll show up. Now, if you click the button, it'll then go to an auction site, and you'll be able to pick a property on that auction site of a long list of properties that are going to be for sale. I'm Ted Thomas. I'll see you on the next video. Don't forget, request your free auction list right below me.